Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. This morning, we're going to be looking at the credit control settings in your customer records and also a little bit of the credit control features within your Sage 50 account software. So my name's Jackie. I'll be taking you through today's session, but I am also joined by Michael and Abby, who are on hand for any questions that you may have today on today's session. So first of all, just before we begin, we always do some housekeeping first. It might be your first session with us. You may be regulars to our webinars, but you will see that your microphone is placed on mute. That just means you can't speak to the team directly. So if you do have any questions, you will need to use our questions panel to submit your questions across to us. You can use the icon that looks like the speech bubble with the question mark in the middle, and that will open up the panel where you can type in your question to the team. We also have a handout for today's session, so if you want to take a copy of that, there is the option that looks like a document with a folded corner, and that will allow you to take a copy of today's slides. But we are going to be quite heavy on demonstration today. We are going to be using the demonstration data, so if you do want to sort of go along the process with us or try it after today's session, then you can use your demonstration data to have a look and a play around as well. And there will be a recording available shortly after today's session, a link for which will be sent to you in the follow-up email shortly after today's session. Okay, so this is what we're going to cover first of all. So the first thing to sort of mention is we have done credit control webinars before. We've done them in various different formats, and we have really emphasized on some of the features we're going to go through today, and they're all available on our recordings page. But today what we're really going to focus on is the customer record itself and the credit control settings within there, how you can enter them, and then how you can use that to your benefit when you're looking at credit control and chasing your customers. So then I'm going to link into the Chase Debt view. So I'm going to show you how some of those settings that you can set up can then be pulled through into Chase Debt, and then you can start to use those to filter your customer list. Now I'm very briefly going to touch on aging, just because they are a key feature of the Chase Debt view. Now we have a whole session on aged balances and aging reports, so I am going to be quite brief on those, but we will again, like I say, give you a link to the recording shortly after today's session. And then if you've got any further questions at the end that we can maybe demonstrate for you, we'll cover those towards the end of the session. Okay, so I'm not going to go through the slides now. I'm actually going to go on to the demonstration straight away. But what we have done is give you an explanation of each of the settings within that credit control window. So I'm just going to jump onto my demonstration data. So if you've never used demonstration data before, what you can do is log into your account software. If you go into File and Open, there'll be an option in there for demonstration data. Now I can't see it at the moment because I'm already in the demonstration data. But when it asks you to log in, the login name is manager, and if you leave the password blank, this will take you into a data set which is very, very similar to what I have here now at the moment. Now I have done some playing around and some changing of some settings, so it might not be identical, but very similar to what we have here today. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to go through a record. So I'm going to just pick any one, and what I'm going to do is pop into the credit control tab, which is on the left hand side of the screen. And this is the window that we're going to focus our attention on today. So I am going to kind of just go down the list here at this point and talk about each of these. Some of them are items you'll probably use quite heavily, and there may be others that you'll probably never use, but it's good to understand why they're there in case you do want to start using them, or in case you just decide, actually, that one's not for me, I'll not go ahead with that one. And then, like I say, we'll show you how this can pull through into the module to start making your life easier for chasing debt. So we're going to start off in this terms section first of all. And in here, the first one is the credit limit. So this allows you to pop in a credit limit. So it may be that you've done some credit checks and you've applied a credit limit to that particular customer. And this just means that you can be notified when the customer's orders have maybe exceeded that particular limit. So you can pop in a limit if this is relevant to yourself. So I'm just going to leave this one as is at the moment. And we're going to look next at what the settlement due is. So these two here, settlement due and settlement discount, tie in together quite nicely. So these two are relating to what was called settlement discount and is sometimes called prompt payment discount. And this is where you can offer a discount to your customers if they pay within a given time frame. So it's really there to try and promote quick payment of your invoices. So in this situation, what I have here is a settlement discount of 2.5%. So it's 2.5%, yes, that's correct, if they pay within 30 days. And that means it will automatically be calculated and automatically deducted from the invoice if that is within the 30-day period. Now, a key thing to note is that does pull through onto things like invoice payments. So we're going to do a session next week on invoice payments where you can get your customers to pay invoices via PayPal and Stripe. You can also apply settlement discounts on there too. Obviously, if you're not offering that form of discount to your customers, you can leave these boxes empty and it won't apply any discounts onto the invoices for you. So next we're going to move down to the next two. Again, these two tie in together quite nicely. This is the payment due and the payment due from. So this is different to aging. So we're going to talk about aging in a little bit, in a little while, just to sort of differentiate what we mean by payment due and how that is different from the aging process. Payment due, however, is how long it takes for that invoice to become overdue. So some people might have a quicker payment due terms if you're maybe quite new, and you may have some who you've built up a good relationship with and you're going to give them slightly longer to pay. So it could be that your customers all have different payment due dates. You could have some on 15 and others on maybe 45 or 60 days. So you can enter this into each record individually, but if you're on standard and professional, you do have the option to do a batch change across multiple items. Now I'm just going to leave this as 30 days for the moment. That tends to be the standard, is 30 days. So the payment should be due within 30 days. If it's paid after 31 days, then it starts to show as overdue in your chase debt window. And then we have the payment due from. So not everybody wants them to start counting down those 30 days immediately. The default is 30 days after the invoice, but you might want to wait till the start of the next calendar month. So you do have options here, a little drop down option. And as you can see, it might be 30 days from the first day of the following month, which you can select, or it could be 30 days from 1 month after the invoice date. So we have added some more options in here. This was a few versions back where you can actually have that payment due from and select which one is relevant to you and your business. And again, this could be different per customer depending on the agreement that you have in place with them. Now we have the average time to pay, and this is the number of days it takes to pay based on your invoices and your payments in the software. So this should populate automatically, so there's nothing to enter there. And next is the trading terms. Okay, so these are the terms that you've agreed again with your customer, and this is something that can be pulled through onto your invoice. So as you can see here, we've got 30 days strictly net. That might be different for other customers again, but you can use Report Designer to pull that information through onto your documents. Now, the reason I'm mentioning that is we do have a session this afternoon, and that will show you exactly how to add that onto your invoice layouts. So if you do want to start seeing this pulled through, then please join us at 2 o'clock today, and we'll show you how to add that onto your invoice layouts going forward. And again, if you've got customers that have different payment terms, so you might have some on 30, you may have some on 45, Abby will show you methods that you can use that will pull through this information specifically so that your different payment terms are all pulled through onto that layout. So that's at 2 o'clock today if you want to get registered for that session. Okay, now I'm going to touch on something here, which I'll be honest, in my time on technical support was not something I had a lot of sort of queries on. So it might be something that you want to skim past, but it might be something that is relevant to you. And this is all about credit references and the credit reference agency that you're using. So you can see here it's asking for a credit reference. So if you have done some credit reference checks and you've got a credit reference, you can in fact enter it into this box here. Now what this allows you to do is to check with the credit reference agency. So if you do want to sort of double check again, or it might be that the application you previously had has expired, you can use the software to check with your credit reference agency. So the number can be entered here. And then we've got the bureau. So this has to be set up elsewhere. And I will come back to this in a moment, but I'll just quickly explain where you need to set this up. But if you go into settings and internet options, I'll just double check that one for you. Internet resources, and you've got that wrong. You can set up your credit bureaus in there. So here what I would do is I would select which bureau. So I've got one set up as default, which is Dun & Bradstreet. And when I click on here, it allows me to check with that credit reference agency. Now we do have some missing information at the moment, and that's just because we're on the demonstration data. I can't really do a credit check for this particular customer, but I'll show you what bit of information is missing and why you can't do that check at the moment, so that you know you can fill that in and you can start to use that to do the checks for you. But like I say, not a really heavily used part of the software, but it might be something that becomes relevant to you, that you can enter that data into the software. Next, we have the priority customer tick box. Now we'll probably use this for those customers that you want to sort of prioritize for credit control chasing. So popping a tick in the box just means they're marked as a priority, so that when you're doing your chasing, you can look for those with the priority tick. And then we've got the credit position and the account status here. So again, these are for you to notify your staff of what situation you are in with that particular customer. So if the credit position is good, you can select it that they're in a good position. But if you've had to go down the route of issuing warning letters or emails to that individual, then you can pop that as a little note on, internal note, to say we're currently at a warning stage with this particular customer over debts outstanding with them. And also the account status. Now we did do a full quick learn on the account status feature, but if you know that they have moved from maybe being a good customer into a situation where the credit limit has expired, or they've exceeded their credit limit without prior permission, then you can change their status here, and you can set up new statuses within settings and configuration. So these are the default ones, but you can add more. So you can see at the end I've created one called test. And some of these statuses will just keep the status on the account, but as you can see, some of these will pop the account on hold. And what that means is it means you can't then put on additional transactions depending on what that on hold status is set up for. Now again, like I say, we've done a full session on account status, so if you want to know a bit more about popping on hold and how on hold can either give you a warning or stop transactions completely, please do check out that session, because we spent a whole session just on that drop down alone. But as you can see, this one originally came through because they were in liquidation. So unfortunately, that is the case sometimes where businesses are maybe going under. We need to pop that note on the account so that we don't process any more invoices whilst that process is going through. And the final one for the terms box is the DUNS number. Now again, in my time, I've very rarely spoken to people who have needed to use a DUNS number. So a DUNS number stands for, apologies there, DUNS number is stands for Dun and Bradstreet. It's a 9-digit number, and it's only really to be used if you're using transaction email. And this just makes sure that if you're having to submit anything using transaction email, using a system called Zanzibar, that you've got that number in there. So it's for compatibility with submissions online. Like I say, it might not be something you ever need to use, but the feature is there should you need to. But we do get a lot of questions around what is this DUNS number and why would I ever need that? And it's basically a number for submission through that specific portal. Okay, so next what we're going to do is we're just going to have a quick look at the restrictions here and a quick look at the credit review, and then we're going to go into the Chase debt view. So first of all, we've got the restrictions at the bottom. So you may be familiar with this terms agreed option here. So once you've agreed your terms with your customer, you can tick this box, and it means you won't keep getting the prompt to indicate that terms have not yet been agreed. So once everything's been agreed, pop that tick in and you'll just stop getting that prompt. We've got the one here that says can charge credit. So this is for late payment charges. And again, we've done a whole session on this. So if you can do late payment charges, then you can tick this option here and that feature can be utilised. And if you want to restrict mailing to a customer, so credit control, letters, etc., which we've covered again in a different session, then you can use the option to restrict mailing, and that will just stop the credit control letters from being issued. Okay, so the final section here is just a credit review. So if you want to pop in the dates that you did your last credit review, when the next one's due, you can record all of that in here so that you can see when your next credit review is required for each customer. And this memo section here can be used so that you can have a look at any history, any notes that you've jotted down on the account. So it's good for maybe notifying other members of the team about information on accounts there. So what I'd like to do next is actually put some of this into context. I've kind of just gone through a whole heap of options there, but what I'd like to do is put into context as to how this could probably be used for you when you're using your software to help you start to chase your customers for outstanding payments. So if you just bear with me one moment, we're just going to swap the screens over. And what we're just going to do there is pop onto the customer view there. So we're in the customers module now. Just check everything's loaded up there. So we're in the customers list. So this is our standard view that you can see there at the moment. So in standard view, this is a list of our customers. We've got things like our credit limit showing by default, and we've got things like the contact and the contact details there. But what we do have in the top corner here is the option to change this onto Chase debt view. And what this does, once it loads up, is this just changes the view to be more relevant to sort of chasing your payments and chasing your customers for payments of your invoices. So it's quite subtle there when you change over between the two. Can't see a huge difference, but you can see I've got columns like overdue, the balance, and disputed, which are more relative to chasing payments. What we can also do in here is we can add columns in. So I've just logged on and shown you the default there, but what you can do is add additional columns if you wanted to. So here it's showing me things like my promised payments, my payment method, if items are disputed. But if I wanted to show things like my aging periods, then I can do so by adding those in here too. So just right click on any of the top columns, but it will add them in a sort of specific location. So we can't really move these around, unfortunately. So I'm just adding those aging periods on there. Now what's great with this window is it allows me to export this information to Excel. So if I've got all the information I need for chasing customers, I can click the option to send to Excel, And what that will do is that will send a copy of that information into Excel where I can manipulate it, I can apply searches, sorts and filters from there. So you can see there what that would look like in Excel. So it's exactly what you can see on the screen, just transferred into the Excel document. We won't save that one. Okay, so just coming back to some of those features and those settings that I showed you within the customer module, just want to show you how they can start to work for you. So in here, what we have is we have the filter option, which allows us to apply our own filter, which I'll clear and apply and close. Or we have the drop down, which allows us some predefined filters. So what we've been entering earlier was things like our payment due. So we, on some customers, had the payment due within 30 days, and on others it was perhaps 45 days. So what we can do is we can ask the software to show us all of our customers that have invoices overdue depending on their specific payment terms. So I can use the overdue option here, the overdue drop down, and as you can see, it's now filtered them down. So I in fact have 24 of my 31 have overdue invoices. So this is great. It allows me to start thinking about these are the 24 that I need to prioritize over the other customers that don't have outstanding or overdue balances. What I can also do is look at things like on hold. So I might want to do a search that shows me just those who have an on hold status. So as you can see there, I've got 4 customers who are on hold at the moment. And also other ones, things like promised payments. So if we've gone into the communications tab and added a promised payment, we can also filter by those who've made a promise so that we can chase them up again and say, we haven't yet received that promised payment. So it just allows us to filter this window a bit more to our needs. What we can also do is add a custom filter. So to do a custom filter, we can either use custom in this list here, or we can go to filter here. I'm just going to show you how a custom filter can work. It allows us to search for more than one thing at a time. So what we could do is we could perhaps do a search to show us where an account is on hold. So account status or account on hold is equal to yes. And because I want to look at someone who is on hold but also has an overdue balance, I need to select an additional line. So just click underneath. I'm going to add and then find our overdue just a bit further down. Apologies. There's quite a few in here you can search by. And again, in the condition, we can choose equal to, it might be less than a particular value, but in this case, we're going to choose greater than 0. So I want to see those customers who are on hold, but also have an overdue balance. And if I apply, that just filters that down to 3 of my 31 customers. So that's just a way that you can start to pull those control settings through into the customer and chase debt view there. Okay, so I'm just going to clear my filters now. So I'm clearing my form and applying and closing. And what we're going to look at next is just those aging periods. So we've talked about due dates. So it may be that all of my customers have the same due date, but you might be in a situation where your customers have different due dates. But what we have that is different is aging periods. So aging periods is the same across all of your customers. And this allows you just to see how old invoices are. So it's not linking to payment due at all. Now you can choose your aging settings. Now to do this, you can go into settings and then customer defaults. Let's bring that across and into the aging/due date tab. So by default, it's normally in aging periods 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, if you're on demo data, it's actually set to calendar monthly aging by default. Okay, so you can choose if you want to do period aging. So if you want balances to show as in period 1, you can choose what range you want to pick. So I might, for example, say, actually, I want it to be 15 to 44. So I can pick my own ranges within here. So I can change this column here, and it will all automatically impact this column here. But I'm just going to change those back to the standard, which is your 30, 60, 90. Or you might do calendar monthly aging. So you might want to look at them in terms of calendar months as well. So I'm going to leave mine as period aging because that tends to be the most common. But you, again, on demonstration data, you can have a play around to see which one you like or which one you want to work with. Okay, so what that's done is it's aged my invoices. Now, obviously, I'm working in demonstration data, so some of these invoices are very old, but I can start to see again which ones to prioritize. So if I've got a filter on here for those that are overdue, which I'll just pop on now. So these are all of those that are overdue for their own payment due terms. Also, look at these columns here, 30, 60, 90, and older to prioritize which ones I want to chase. So for all these are overdue, these ones here, this one here, for example, they're actually only 30 days old in comparison to some of these which are much older. So I might want to prioritize those ones or even start looking at other processes in the form of maybe reminders or warning letters to these individuals. Now we use these aging periods for aged reports. So if you're ever running reports, it's quite a common one is what report should I run to see my outstanding balances? Age reports tends to be one of the ones we would suggest. So if I pop into reports, which is just opened on the other window, see if I can bring that one across, do apologise. And into age debtors. Now you've got age creditors and suppliers, so it's very similar. In here you can see there are a lot of different formats. Okay, now the two I normally say to start with are your detailed and your summary. Okay, just standard. So I'm going to run the summary, and what this does is it gives you a list of all of your outstanding invoices. Apologies, I've got a customer highlighted, so this is exactly where you don't go wrong. So if you just make sure before you run that report, you don't have anything highlighted, or it will only run that report for that customer. I'm just going to pop back and try that again. So pop into my age debtors and find that one again. There we go. Now we can run this for any date, but if we're running this into the past, so for example, if I was doing the 1st of January this year, what we need to be careful with is not to include any later payments. So if I just pop that one on, because that means if it's been paid since the 1st of January, I'm not getting a true reflection of what was outstanding on the 1st of January. So I just need to tick that box there, and that gives me everything that was outstanding at that point in time. And again, this will just help me with working out who I need to chase based on those aging periods. And it's up to you whether or not you go down the aging route for chasing your payments or the overdue route. But I think both of them tied together really do give you a picture of which ones to chase first. Now we have done, like I say, a much more in-depth session on the aged debtors report. So I don't want to go too in depth on that one because they've got a session in their own right there. But it was just to give you some insight, because the two of both the payment due terms and the aging can sometimes quite often get muddled up together. So a great opportunity now is to get your questions across to the team. So if you do have any questions, please do get them across, and we'll see if Abby and Michael can get those answered for you. Okay, so we're just going to pop back onto the slides there. So I'm just going to bring those across. Just see if I can share the screen again there for you so you can see those. So we do have a little bit of information there on the slides around those age reports and how to change the aging periods. One thing just to note there is the due date tick box. Now, not everyone will have this one. It's this one just here. And this is because if you're using version 28 or below, if you have your payment due days set to 0, it automatically thinks it's 30 days. I know that sounds really quite odd, but that's what it used to do, is it would default to 30 days. However, if you're on 28.1 and above, and you tick this tick box here, it will mean 0 will mean 0. Okay, so it won't default to 30, it will mean 0. So you may have customers that you're not going to give payment terms to because you want that immediate payment, in which case you need to tick this box and make sure that their due date is set to 0 days. So that was just something that came in, and that was based on customer feedback as well, and it came in 28.1, which was last summer. Now, there is so much information on our help centre around credit control. And like I said, we've spread these across about 3 or 4 different webinars. So there are other ones out there around how to use the communication history, how to do things like your statements and letters. So please do check those sessions out. But on the Help Centre, there is a lot of information, and there's also access, if you're using version 29 and above, to the Help Centre within the software. And I will just show you that in just a moment so you can see how you can get contextual help wherever you are in the software, which is particularly useful with that particular window that we've focused on today. But if you do want to find our Help Centre outside of your software, pop onto sage.co.uk/help, and that will take you into our Help Centre there. So I'm just going to quickly pop back onto the software because I do just want to show you what I mean with this help option. So I'm just going to open up a record. Apologies, everything's opening on a different window today, but if I bring this across and if I go into the credit control tab, if we click on help, what this brings up is our help centre in product, and you can see it's giving me help relating to the window I'm in. So I do have the customer record credit control tab help guide here, and that goes through all of the settings there for you, and again it links off to other articles that are relevant. Okay, so back to the slides there. Okay, so just a little bit more information about the upcoming webinars. So as I mentioned this afternoon, Abby will be looking at adding payment terms to your invoice. So if you've looked at the payment terms there and thought actually that would be really handy or really good to have that on all of my invoices, Abby is going to show you 3 different ways in which you can add those onto your invoice layout. So that's today at 2 o'clock if you would like to join us for that quick learn session. Also talking about getting paid quickly and getting your customers to pay the invoices, then we have some options. And tomorrow, Michael will be looking at Opeo. So this was formerly Sage Pay. So if you want to find out more about adding a pay now option on your invoice, so customers can link in and pay via Opeo, then tomorrow at 2 o'clock, Michael will be taking you through that. A very similar situation is invoice payments. And we have a session on that next week, next Wednesday. We'll be looking at invoice payments, and that allows you to take payments via PayPal and Stripe. So all of these are available on our webinar page, and a link to that will be in the follow-up email today. Okay, so it's time just to see if there is any questions that are outstanding there or anything that I can demonstrate there for you. So a few questions there about how you can sort of leave comments and things around chasing customers. So what I will just do is I'll pop back onto the demonstration. Now, we have done a session which talks about communication history and issuing statements. So I'll just very quickly give you a quick demonstration of this, but we have got a session on this. But we have a communications option at the top of your chase debt screen. So if you go into communications, What this allows you to do is to log any conversations. That might be a telephone call, it might be an email that you've received or a letter that you've received, and record that on here. So if I just quickly go on to add entry, it allows me to record what the communication was, the topic, with regards to what balance, and you also have the option for the notes. So if it's for a particular invoice, you can pop in the notes that it's for invoice 400, for example. And what that starts to do is put a sort of timestamp on their record so that you can start to see how often you've been chasing. You know, if you've only chased them in the last 2 days, you might not want to chase them just yet. And you can start to sort of be more methodical with your chasing of your debts. So that is a feature that you can use, and that's the communications history. What you can also do is when you're issuing statements to customers, a lot of them do have the prompt of, do you want to update the communication history? And when you say yes, it will also start to populate this communications window here. So you can start to keep track of all the documents, all the conversations, etc., that have occurred with that customer. So there's quite a few questions on that one. So it does have that feature there. So a few questions are around credit limits. So as you can see in the demonstration data, some of these are in red, and the ones in red are those customers who have exceeded the credit limit. That's where they're showing in red. With regards to what credit limit to apply, that's something that you would need to possibly discuss with your accountant or your credit reference agency. Unfortunately, we can't tell you what credit limits to pop in there, because obviously it's dependent on your business and your situation there. What I did just miss out earlier, I did say I was going to show you this, and I do apologise, I've just remembered, just coming back to that, is the credit reference settings. So in settings and internet resources, you have the option for either couriers. So if you're using any couriers for issuing your stock, you can use the couriers option, but credit info allows you to set up any credit reference agencies you're working with. So the first one here is an example that we've used in our Ask Sage articles, which is done in Bradstreet. And if I just double click on here, it allows me to pop in their name, their website, and also the link you would use for checking or for doing a credit reference check. Now, I obviously don't have that in, which is why I got that message earlier, but if you popped yours in and all of this information was correct, it would link you direct to their account using their credit reference number to attempt to check their credit reference. So apologies for that, I did forget about that one, but there you go. Okay, so we're coming towards the end of the session there. I think we've covered all of the questions for today. So quick one there around your statements don't log in the communication window. What I would just maybe suggest, have a look at some other statements, see if they do. If not, have a quick chat with one of our technical support guys, because sometimes they don't have the flag on them. But it might be, if it's a standard layout, that there is a flag on there, or if you've had something customized, that flag might not be on there. But they should normally, if they're a default one, ask you to if you want to update the communication window. And another question there, is there any option to auto send statements? Unfortunately not. It is still a manual process. You would need to go in and do the statements feature, but you can set them up to email, and you can set them up so that they can all you can do a sort of batch of them, providing you've got all the email details set up in your customer records. A quick question there around, can you show disputing an invoice? I can very briefly show you it. We have done a whole session on disputes as well, but disputing an invoice, quite an easy feature. We've got the disputes option here at the top. So if I click on dispute at the top, what that's doing is pulling out all of my outstanding invoices. So all I need to do is select which one I need to dispute, click on dispute option here, and it then asks me my reason. Okay, so your reasons, again, very similar to account status, can be set up in settings configuration, and you can set up your own reasons, but there are some there by default, and these are the ones that come with the demo data. So you can give it a reason, and what that will do is it will pop a little disputed flag next to that particular transaction, and you can save. And it just means that when we go into our activity, just double check which one I've just disputed there. Apologies, I'm going to just try that again. Go back into disputes and dispute that one there. Yeah, so it's 781. And go into transactions. Just find my transaction number. So just going to pop back into customers there, just find the right customer, which is this one here. Into activity. We've got a disputed item here. So you can see just outside, next to the outstanding one, in that column there, we've got a D for disputed and also an asterisk for outstanding. If we want to take it back off disputed, then we can just go back into disputes, and you can remove by highlighting the item. Just find the right one again. It's testing me this morning. Just find our business one. Find the disputed item, and then you can just click dispute again to take the dispute flag off there. So that's how to add a dispute. So we're going to be doing some more sessions on emailing statements. So I would definitely recommend if you have a look for our upcoming sessions. I think we've got a session in the next few weeks on emailing statements or emailing documents, and it can be applied to statements. But we've also got recordings. Again, they can take quite a while to go through. So I would definitely recommend either looking for the live session that's coming or joining onto the recorded webinar. Okay, so I think that's it. We're almost on 1:45, so I think that's it for today's session. So thank you for everyone for joining us today. Like I said, we've got quite a few other sessions this week, so please do check those out. And again, our webinars will continue over the next few weeks as well, so keep an eye out for the upcoming content. In the meantime, though, thank you very much for joining us. Take care, and we'll see you on another session really soon.